service to the town. So with that addition, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda as amended. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Next item on the agenda is announcements, and we will go directly to the recognition of Judge Coleman's service to the town. If you would come forward, sir.
I think being a municipal judge is one of those jobs that, for the most part, is thankless. But we do want to take the opportunity to thank Judge Coleman at this point in time. It's my understanding that you have served as the municipal judge for the town of Kingman for over 30 years. So that is really quite amazing. Well, that's what I said. So, matter of fact, I'm going to read the plaque. In grateful appreciation for Bradley Coleman for your tireless dedication and commitment to the town of Kingman and for upholding the laws of our community for over 30 years. Municipal Judge, April 1988 through December 2019. Thank you very much.
I'd like to express my appreciation to the Chief of Police and all of his predecessors, and we've had a great working relationship. To Cindy and the clerks that served before her, just been a great keeping together most of the time. And to the council especially for putting up with me for 30 years. I really want to appreciate that even though I've been an employee of the town, I've never once felt any pressure to make any decisions in certain ways or deal with anybody different than any other people. So I really appreciate you serving me in that way.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next item on the agenda is visitors and guests. This is an opportunity for visitors to address the board on a matter that is not on the agenda. If you allow no more than 5 minutes, if you wish to speak, you need to be recognized by the chair. Please come to the podium and state your name and your address. If you have anyone who wishes to address the board on a matter that is not on the agenda, yes, Mr. Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Governor Paonia. Since Mr. Pace has filed a lawsuit against the town, I want to express to you my feeling that the town has a moral obligation to offer Mr. Pace some kind of a settlement. I realize that the town is letting the insurance company attorneys try and get the suit dismissed on technical grounds. I kind of think there'll be a second chance even if this one is dismissed with a federal suit. Just to review briefly, I've talked before about the lawsuit itself. I never addressed the board about what it was about, the issue of the way Mr. Pace was treated by the town. So just to review, the judge ruled, he stated that the lawsuit was brought in bad faith, that the town did not advance a single plausible explanation for why any of the documents could be withheld, and he took the extraordinary step of stating that Mr. Pace had not received a fair review of his complaint. And so tonight I just want to show you a very brief skip off the top of a couple of the documents that I received as a result of that action. The first is in Mr. Pace's complaint. He alleged that his time cards had been changed improperly and without his permission. And he took pictures like this before and after some time cards. And when you get these chorus things, you get this dump of documents, and there was these pictures in there like this, and I couldn't figure out what this was. So I asked Pace, and they said they believe that this was the way that their time card looked when it was sent to the expert that was to review that portion of his complaint. The time card was redacted. Any of you have paid little attention, you've probably perused the handbook for elected officials that SEARSA puts out. And then there's one of the chapters that I agree with, I think is right on, it explains that an elected official has no authority to make any demands or order employees in any way. Particularly, there might be some extraordinary circumstance where an employee or an elected official is granted that power by an action of the board. In the documents that were released, there are 2 letters like this from Mr. Stewart to Mr. Pace, ordering him to comply or to submit to a somewhat mysterious and unprecedented, unique investigation that he was subjected to. And I actually have asked repeatedly for some statutory underpinnings of how that was handled and conceived. I've never received an answer about that. And then finally, there's a lot more in it. There's a lot of documents that were released, but this is one that I think is very interesting. And the packet that the board received at the end of that was a memo from Mr. Stewart that had been sent to Mr. Pace, telling him that Mr. Stewart thought that this was a closed case. He didn't anticipate taking any further action. And it says that as a result, it is clear that you have engaged in some impropriety, and states that the board has been involved in the process that Mr. Pace was subjected to. This is the official record that was handed to the board. Well, it turns out Mr. Pace received a different letter, okay? And this letter doesn't say that you've committed an impropriety by your actions, and it does not make any claim that the board has been involved in this proceeding in any way. And so I don't know what you call it when you have an official record that contains one document, and you actually have a different document that was sent to the person that this document represents that they were sent to. So I urge you all to get a hold of the official record. If you can't get it from the town, I'll get it to you. Like I say, I think the town treated Mr. Pace unfairly, and I think you have a moral obligation to offer him some kind of a settlement. The guy was injured and hung up. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else that would like to address the board on a matter that is not on the agenda? Seeing no one, we will move forward. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have 2 items, the regular meeting minutes from January 28th and the special event permit, Elsewhere Studios and DJ Kitchen. The second item really should be removed from the consent agenda. There is an issue there, and if it is approved, there may be a condition attached to it. I would therefore need a trustee to request that that item be removed from the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I request that we remove the minutes of, I think it's the 28th, from the consent agenda.
Well, actually, I know that you have some questions about the minutes of the agenda. I think we can correct that without necessarily leaving it off the consent agenda. However, the second matter is a matter where there probably needs to be some discussion and potentially a vote. So it's the second matter that I was suggesting taken off the consent agenda.
I'll revise my motion to move that the Elsewhere issue be taken from the consent agenda.
And technically, it doesn't even have to be a motion. Any trustee can request a matter be taken from the consent agenda, and based upon that, we'll take that second matter off the consent agenda. So let's deal with the consent agenda with the first item, the regular meeting minutes of January 28, 2020. I know that there is an item or an issue that Trustee Knudsen wished to point out and address.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In unfinished business mayor pro tem appointment, it says Mayor Stewart, elected trustee Bachran. My recommendation is that the wording be changed to Mayor Stewart, suggested trustee Bachran. And then I don't believe trustee Bachran made the motion to nominate herself. I think someone else made that motion. It may have been, was it trustee Budinger that made that motion? I'm
I
not sure.
believe that is the case.
Yeah, I think it was trustee Budinger. They both start with B, so I think we're okay. But those are the only two things that I wanted to bring to you.
And I'm in agreement with those two changes as well. With those two changes, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda, which at this point in time will consist only of the,
Just one more thing. It
Yes.
says the meeting adjourned at 6:30. That was the shortest meeting I've ever been at.
that would have been, it may have been 6:30 a.m.
It felt like 6:30 a.m. So I think we actually broke a lot later than that.
10:30, probably closer to it. Okay, with those three changes, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Okay, let's address the second item in regard to Elsewhere Studios. Elsewhere Studios appears to fail to file a periodic report with the Secretary of State's office. Is that the case, Administrator Person?
The actual document that wasn't initially provided and resulted in non-compliant status was the renewal and the payment of the fee. To update the board, since I made Elsewhere Studios aware of the situation, they have provided me the proof that all of the documents have been submitted and accepted by the Secretary of State. To date, the status on the certificate of good standing is not updated online, and so I made them aware that my recommendation would be that if the board chooses to permit the special event, that it be contingent upon compliance with their good standing by the date of the event.
Okay, based on that, I would entertain a motion regarding the application by Elsewhere Studios, a special event permit application.
I move that we approve the special event permit for Elsewhere Studios contingent on the fact that the Secretary of State decided, well, that they're compliant with everything required from the Secretary of State.
We have a second on that. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. And one thing I will bring to their attention, it looks like they're continuing to submit the same certificate of good standing with each application, so we really do need to just go in and update that when they submit their application. Okay, we will move forward. The mayor's report. Just one thing that I want to state again, I stated it previously, that the general rule is that there's not going to be any additions to the agenda after the agenda meeting because of some of the scheduling requirements that the town administrator has. Basically, that is occurring on Thursday morning instead of Wednesday. But we really do need to have a set agenda really on Thursday. The only exception really would be an emergency situation, and even that would have to be noticed at least 24 hours in advance of any meeting. There's a couple things. One, obviously, we're trying to provide the public with as much notice as possible in terms of what will be on the agenda, but also, too, in terms of preparing the package for publication, packet publication, it is very difficult to start inserting documents into that packet once it is prepared. So, just a reminder, and we're going to strive for that. Obviously, we get emergency situations where we have to deviate from that rule, but hopefully everybody can keep that in mind. I have nothing else to report. We'll move forward to staff reports, the administrator's report. Administrator.
I'll try to move quick as well. We have a heavy agenda. The first thing, which is a bit of good news, we did receive the Energy Impact Assistance grant from DOLA for our asset inventory. They have agreed and provided us the grant for the full amount that we asked for, and are expediting the contracts. We should have them within the next couple of weeks so that we can schedule a kickoff meeting with SGM at which time they will begin to put their calendar together and are preliminarily planning to start the asset inventory in the beginning of April. I am currently working with the town attorney looking at what would be the proper procedure to address the parcel in town that has dual zoning. And so we're looking into that. We want the board to be aware because that may come back in front of you in the near future. I attended the bi-weekly Delta County Economic Alliance meeting yesterday. The group continues to work on the IGA and the MOU between the individual municipalities as well as the Delta County Economic Alliance and Delta County itself. They're working on those agreements. They're also working on the bylaws and the project manager job description and work plan. I have invited, they asked to come back and speak, so I have invited Mayor Wilkening from Hotchkiss and another member of the executive committee to provide an update and discuss the town's participation, probably in March. Will be when that request to be on the agenda will come forward. I attended a commissioners meeting to review a boundary adjustment that's outside the town but also affects an in-town and an out-of-town lot. A correction was noted to the map during my attendance at the meeting to include a town road easement. And so that will be coming back, that will be going back before the commissioners after that correction is made. As some are aware, we have had a situation with our email account where we had a phishing, or they call it spoofing issue with our town email. In order to rectify that, we are going to have to implement a secondary validation requirement. It's going to be a little bit of a pain. Everyone has instructions on how to get back in and set that up when you get that notification. Basically what will happen is once we tell our IT phone plus to establish that, it will generate an auto password, which I will have to provide to each of you. You'll have to use that password and then set up your new password and a secondary mechanism before you're able to log into your email, which could be a text message with a code that you would have to enter. And unfortunately, you will have to do that every time you log out and log back in, but it's necessary so that people are not accessing our information, email, and domain. The building code review will be before the Planning Commission on Thursday night at 5 p.m. And tomorrow night at 6 p.m. is the last master plan meeting, which will address land use. And that's it. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. Thursday night is the Planning Commission.
Questions for Ms. Ferguson from members of the board? Yes, Trustee Case.
I was curious about whether we're putting out an RFP for the municipal judge. I think we have an interim in right now, and just wanted to make sure we got an RFP.
We are. We're finalizing that, and it should be out in the next paper to run through. I believe we intend to do interviews and fill the seat or have a recommendation for when the board.
Okay.
Other questions? Yes, Trustee Garrett.
The Zimmer agreement, where was that?
There were some revisions that were provided from Silverleaf and Mr. Zimmer, and Bo has those revisions.
That's on my desk, so we'll get that, those revisions incorporated and get that part.
And everything else has been provided, the asphalt, the stop signs installed, everything else is, that's complete.
Other questions for Administrator Ferguson? Hearing anything? Anything from the public for Administrator Ferguson specific to what she has reported on? I am not hearing anything. We will move forward. Public Works report, Mr. Lobo.
My trailer and us have been trying to keep up with potholes still. We got 2 new bags of pothole patch in them delivered today, so we can start working on more of those. Also going to try to start doing some street cleaning when weather permits. Last week we had 4 water leaks, 3 main leaks and 1 service line leak, which all have been repaired. At the 1 million gallon, we're still spilling 93,000 gallons a day. The 2 million, we're spilling about 93,000 gallons a day, and our production water is right at 159,000 gallons a day. So almost 100,000 gallons we've saved in the last week with getting those leaks repaired. And that's all I've got, unless you guys have any questions.
Questions from the board, Mr. Lober?
What's the issue with the water leak? I noticed that one up on Third Street. Is that in the new pipeline?
The one on Third
Out there
Street.
by Solar Leak?
No, that wasn't a water leak, that was, repair on the sewer line.
So were the water leaks on the new line or were they on?
No, they were on old lines.
Other questions from members of the board, Mr. Lober? Hearing anything? Anything from the public, Mr. Lober, for things that he has reported on this evening? Hearing anything, we will move forward. Police report, Chief Ferguson.
The next couple of weeks are going to be a couple of very busy weeks. 3 of our officers will be at the trial starting at the beginning of the month and continue for 5 to 10 days. And on top of that, we also are investigating a sex assault incident that happened. These kind of cases take numerous hours to complete and have multiple officers being busy with trying to investigate those. The chiefs and sheriffs got together last week. We spoke about back the badge. At this time, we are going to try for the initiative in November. It was just a beginning preliminary meeting, whether we're going to go and start talking about everything else that goes along with that. And that's all I have for now.
Questions for Chief Ferguson from members of the board? Not hearing anything. Questions from the public, Chief Ferguson, related to the items that he has reported on? Not hearing anything, we will move forward. Treasurer's report. Treasurer King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Spent the past week reviewing the resolution 2003 budget amendment, and I recommend approval. The Finance and Personnel Committee has reviewed fund balances in all of our accounts, balance, reviewed payroll and disbursements, and have been reviewing the refinancing documents and recommend proceeding to the board. And that concludes my report.
Questions for Treasurer King from members of the board? I'm not hearing anything. Anything from the public for Treasurer King? I'm not hearing anything. We will move forward. Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2020-03, 2019 Budget Amendment. We have a requirement to reconcile our 2019 budget with 2019's actual expenses. It's my understanding that our expenses exceeded the budgeted expenses. And because of that, we do need to go forward with the resolution. Ms. Jones, would you like to comment on this?
All right, so the budget update is due to the changes that we made throughout the year. We didn't do the bridge project that we had planned on, so that is a positive change, and that we still have that money. We did collect extra tap fees that we weren't expecting, and we got some grant revenue that we weren't expecting. So those are all positive changes. The negative changes were the water issue, the the Clark project and the trash truck. Those were non-budgeted items. And in addition, this budget includes depreciation, or this update includes depreciation. So those are the changes that we're making.
Questions, Ms. Jones? From members of the board?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, trustee
On the
Barry.
enterprise fund, you listed the water situation, the trash truck, what was the third one?
The park project,
Park project. Well, I see that the change from $9,800 to $700,000,
that includes depreciation.
that part of that is depreciated.
Yes.
So it's not cash.
Correct.
Any other questions from the board?
How
Yes,
does the change in the budget from 2019 to 2020, how is that going to change the 2020 budget?
It doesn't affect the 2020 budget at all.
Any other questions, Ms. Jones? I'm not hearing anything. I would entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2020-03.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt Resolution 2020-03 to amend the budget.
Do I have a second? Discussion from the board. I'm not hearing anything. Anything from the public? I'm not hearing anything. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Next item on the agenda is disbursements. I would entertain a motion to approve disbursements.
I move that we approve payment of accounts payable in the amount of $46,585.50. A transfer to payroll account of $19,401.58, and payment of payroll of $19,401.58. Payment of payroll taxes of $7,236.62, and a transfer to the summer account of $100,000, and a transfer from interest to the grant fund of $10.77.
You have a second?
Second.
Any discussion from the board? Yes, Trustee Ball.
I have a question on the elevate, yeah, the Dells functional elevate, that 31,000. What was that for like?
That was the streetlights, yeah, that included the shields.
That's not elevate, that's EMA.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments from members of the board? I'm not hearing anything. Any questions or comments from members of the public? I'm not hearing anything. We have a motion and a second to approve disbursements. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Next item on the agenda, unfinished business. Continued discussion, AMKO, Dorsey and Whitney Bond Council engagement letter. At the last meeting, the board authorized me to enter an agreement with AMCO advisors to act as the town's advisor to issue bonds to retire the USDA bonds. The next step in the process of refinancing this loan is to retain bond counsel. A copy of Dorsey Whitney's engagement letter is included in the packet. To move this forward, I would entertain a motion approving the agreement and authorizing me to sign the agreement on behalf of the town.
Mr. Mayor, I move that you sign that letter, engagement letter, and for engagement.
Second.
Discussion from the board.
Mr. Mayor, I assume that this individual council for the town.
Yes, that's the way I read the engagement letter. It's quite clear that the town would be their client.
And that this will cost approximately $10,000.
That's also my understanding. It's also my understanding that that would be payable upon the closing of the bonds.
And in some situation that doesn't close, I guess, that you're still responsible.
I would presume that is the case. Mr. Nerlin, would you like to comment on that, or Treasurer King?
So I think Ross can fill in that, the engagement letter says that the $10,000 will be taken from the closing of the bond proceeds.
I guess the question is, what would happen if it didn't close or in periods of time?
And I believe the oral representation, and don't let me speak for you, Mr. King, is that they would only charge upon the closing of the loan.
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that clarification. Other questions, comments from members of the board?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
One thing that makes me a little nervous about this is that it does not state that in the bond counsel's letter. And it's always nice to have that in writing, but I don't see that it clearly states that if it doesn't go through, we will not be obligated to pay that.
No, I do think that is a legitimate question, because my reading was that, yes, it would be paid upon closing, but really didn't address what would happen if it didn't close.
Mr. Mayor.
I think Ms. Jones would like to comment on this. Ms. Jones?
There is an email that has been sent out, I believe, to all of you, that is in writing, that says that it confirmed what the fees were and that there wouldn't be any charge unless the bond closes.
So the town has received an email confirming that. Is that correct, Mr. Person?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
So it has been produced to writing. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments from members of the board? Yes, Trustee Patterson.
So the letter explicitly states that the role of bond counsel does not include preparation of the official statement or any due diligence regarding securities laws. So who is responsible for that?
Treasurer King, Ms. Jones, Mr. Earl.
That's correct. Emco is the person that's doing those items.
Any other questions, comments from members of the board? Yes, Trustee Deal.
I also noticed that in this letter, down towards the bottom of it, it says that for every year that this bond goes forward, it's $250 minimum plus additional fees that aren't really clarified. So I guess my big question is, in the long run, what does this save us as a town financially?
$300,000.
How much is it going to cost us up front? And then also says the interest is to be determined. Do you have any idea what that's going to be?
It depends on the underwriter, it depends on who buys it.
A couple things. One, I think you're confusing two letters. I don't think that $250 fee is related to bond counsel. That is actually AMCO, their agreement to go ahead and assist us with some of the required filings. So I think those are two separate agreements. Any other questions, comments from members of the board? I'm not hearing anything from the public. I'm not hearing anything. We have a motion and a second approving the engagement letter with bond counsel and authorizing me to sign on behalf of the town. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Next item on the agenda is ordinance 2020 to be determined, refund water and sewer revenue bond series 2006-06, and issuance of revenue refunding bond series 2020A. I will not read the entire ordinance and then it's legal, because we would be here till 6:30 in the morning. But I will read the caption. An ordinance providing for the issuance by the town of Camden, Colorado, acting by and through its water and sewer enterprise of its water and sewer revenue refunding bonds, series 2020A, in a principal amount not to exceed $1,800,000 for the purpose of refunding, paying, and discharging its outstanding water revenue bond, series 2006, issued pursuant to ordinance 2006-06, delegating certain authority to town officers in connection with the competitive sale of the Series 2028 bonds, pledging certain net revenues for the payment of the Series 2028 bonds, and describing the form and other details of such Series 2028 bonds. That is the caption of the proposed ordinance. The ordinance is necessary to move forward with the issuance of the bond. Basically, we need to authorize payment of the existing bonds and the issuance of new bonds. Based on that, I would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 2020 to be determined.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt ordinance 2020 to be determined.
Do we have a second? Discussion from the board. Yes, Trustee Barrett.
I'll have a lot of questions as they go through here. The first question is, we're authorizing the amount not to exceed 1.8 billion, and it appears like our debt is currently 1.665. Is there an intention to stay at 1.8 million, or is that cap?
Ms. Jones?
That's a cap, that's why it does not exceed that cap. They don't, that's any, right? So it's this 1.6 plus the fees. And then there's just about $100,000 room in there, because we already have the $100,000 in reserves that they require. So it's just a cap that, so it's not to exceed that. And that just gives us room for any possible prices.
Okay, but currently we don't expect to do anything other than the 1.665 and fees.
That's correct.
Yeah, it would be the related closing costs that were discussed at the prior trustees meeting. I think that it's just as a proof that they want to have a number in there that exceeds the amount to repay the bond.
Any other questions? Yes, Trustee Barrett, yes, additional questions?
Well, go ahead and bring up the question, I'll come and circle back.
Other board members have questions at this point?
Okay, well,
Trustee Barrett, back to you.
the reserve account, you say we already have the 125%, or whatever was required.
The 125% is what we budget. The reserve is actually it should be around 100,000. We currently have 106,000 in that account. It's the equivalent to a single payment.
Okay. And then, under section 6, prior redemption, I don't understand, but are we saying that we can't pay them off before 2027? Is that what it's saying? I didn't understand that.
What section is that?
Section 6A, prior redemption. Is there any reason why these couldn't be paid off earlier for some unknown reason? Or are we locked in for a certain amount of time?
My understanding is that it can be paid off. There is no penalty for paying off early. There's nothing in here about being paid off, penalties for paying it off early.
Okay, and just to reiterate, here it says that the only source of revenue for the repayment of the bond is going to be the enterprise fund. There is no ability to reach into the town.
Water and sewer only.
Okay. Let's see.
The trash is also an enterprise fund, but they're not.
Yeah, it's only water and sewer.
That's correct.
And then in section 18, bullet funds, it talks about three different accounts, a rebate account, a bond account, and a reserve account. What is a rebate account?
Defined under section 18.
Just a simple word. And I understand the reserve account, the bond
That's on the next page, on page 18 of the ordinance, or 85 of the packet, section 23. Looks like it's for taxes.
Mr. Maryland, you wish to try to address that?
Yeah, I'm just getting there with respect to section 18. As I understand it, it's to exist to, hold on here 1 second, let me get up to speed, if you don't mind. So yeah, as I understand it, there's a rebate amount of tax that would go on to that.
In section 23.
Yeah.
Other questions, Trustee Fair?
The amount that originally were reported for $32,000 looks like that this process would cost us $52,000, and then in addition to that, the attorney's fees, so we're going to be in this process $62,000, which I assume will come out of the bond funds. Is that correct?
Okay. Excuse me. We received an explanatory memorandum from ENCO describing the fees, and as per our discussion, I'm sending you the information requested on the cost of issuance. And I'll just itemize the things that they indicated. The estimated cost of issuance is $32,000. This includes the $20,000, the advisor fee, the bond counsel fee of $10,000 that was alluded to earlier, one-time payment to U.S. Bank of $300, payment first annual year, U.S. Bank of $350, and a publication fee in the estimate of $1,500. And then he goes on to explain, there's a question about the additional $20,000 fees. And this amount was an estimate, the estimated charge is an underwriting discount. What wasn't included was the sources and uses document was an estimated amount of the reoffering premium that the investor receives at the rate they obtained for you. This amount would be shown in the sources of funds. They go on to say that they always lean towards the conservative side and leave off premium. That way the town will usually be surprised by larger savings. They are not anticipating that additional $20,000, but if in fact it did occur, there would be funds identified in between that to come out of the proceeds.
Okay, thank you.
So that, so that would be, if there was additional savings on the issuance, that they need to do the underwriting, that the 20,000 on that.
Correct.
And then the final decision on whether the process to proceed with this, you know, we have an amount in our current indebtedness now. You guys said 4%. At what point do you guys, were to exceed such, or are you pretty well assured of a certain amount?
They can guarantee nothing. When they go out to bid, they will receive bids from prospective purchasers of these bonds. And if the fees or the interest rates attendant to those bonds are higher than what we would find acceptable, we do not have to accept those fees, and we would terminate the issue.
Okay. So you got an idea in your mind what that was, what that number should be? Or, I mean, and not that you want to talk about now, or just right here.
I would not attempt to guess at what that might be, what the bids might end up. But again, this board has the final approval of whether they accept the proposals or don't accept.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Any other questions from members of the board? Hearing. Yes.
I was curious, when they do their initial issuance and they're describing the town, the description of the town, because this is water, it shows the service area as being the town, not necessarily the entire water district outside of town. So that might be a little bit misleading if I'm reading that right. And then the second question is just whether the water emergency that we had should be mentioned in this?
It is.
Okay.
I just mentioned it. Yeah, I thought.
See it, okay.
Yeah, it's in red, actually. So it's there. And the other thing is even though the map, that in the updated preliminary official statement, which I believe is what you're looking at, the map just shows the town of Peonia, but they do list, when they list all the data, they include all the out-of-town water trucks.
So
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Patrick.
just to confirm, we are addressing the preliminary statement in the separate agenda item, right?
That is correct. We are only
Okay.
addressing the ordinance at this point.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from members of the board? I'm not hearing anything. Questions or comments from members of the public? Yes, please.
Christina Patterson. I was wondering if that ex-sewer property, the Twin Lakes property, is a part of the enterprise fund or is it part of the general fund?
It's an asset of the town. It has nothing to do, it's not encumbered by this bond issue.
Okay, I was
All
just
the
wondering,
revenues of the water and sewer funds are on
because
the
you were saying that it can only, the bond can only be paid off from within the enterprise fund.
revenues from the
So if something like that was sold, you couldn't pay back the bond.
Yeah, just a clarification. The bonds are secured by the revenue from the enterprise fund. That is all
Okay.
they're secured by. They're not secured by the assets in the enterprise fund. They're secured by the revenue.
Got it. And what happens if the town defaults on these loans?
There are mechanisms in the bond issue that would require the town to increase fees to the users to make up for the deficiency that occur.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from members of the public? Yes, Ms. Watson.
So I am wondering about Christina's question. Mayor Stewart said the bonds are secured by the revenue funds, but it talks about paying the bonds off through the enterprise fund. And so if you sold a property that was in the enterprise fund, such as excess property around the sewer treatment pond or like that pasture, which I know we did, but we had returned grant money on that. I always understood that the sewer treatment pond property would be the one that's decommissioned, would be sold to pay down the debt of the new pond that was talked about by Ron Al, for instance, and Dave Weber. So that's why I'm wondering if that's technically a property that's still in the enterprise fund. It's not being used, but it was part of the sewer plan.
Yeah, I mean, that is probably a legitimate question, as to whether or not the Twin Lakes property is property of the enterprise fund or not. And I think that's a question that we might want to address at some point in time. However, for the purpose of what we're discussing right now, the bonds that would be issued would be secured only by the revenue from the enterprise fund, not the assets of the enterprise fund, and therefore the Twin Lakes property would not be collateral on this loan. Other questions, comments from members of the public? Yes.
Just one last point. When I first read this, when we were going over this, I was concerned that they could force us to raise our rates if we're in default of payments. That's also the case of our current bond, so there's no change in that. The bond we have right now that we borrowed under, if we're not paying it back like we should, then we would have to raise our rates in order to make those payments. So there's no change.
Other questions, comments from members of the public or from members of the board? I'm not hearing anything. We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 2020 to be determined. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda is updated preliminary official statement. and for bond refinance. The next step in this process would be to approve a preliminary official statement. The official statement is the document used by the underwriter to sell bonds to potential buyers. Understanding very similar to a prospectus. Basically, to move this forward at this juncture, I would entertain a motion to approve the preliminary official statement.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the preliminary official statement.
And a second. Discussion from the board.
So I do have a few questions on the preliminary statement, but I'm unclear because it says that it's still subject to change. Are we talking about specifics within the statement tonight and making any changes, or will that come at a later date?
I mean, that is a good question, because I take it, Mr. Nerlin, that ultimately there is a final official statement.
Yeah.
And that this is a preliminary official statement. Is that correct?
That's correct. So, as late as this afternoon, there was a revised preliminary official statement that was circulated that I have not had a chance to review, but it's my understanding that there is language in that revised statement that addresses the current moratorium that's in place. So, I think it would probably, I would defer to you, Mayor, but I think it would probably behoove everybody to incorporate the comments that we might have, and then we'll get that back to the issuance.
Okay. So your suggestion is that perhaps we go ahead and continue this matter to the next.
I would say we could potentially adopt, subject to incorporating changes and the desire to see a final statement.
Okay. So I take it then that your advice is that we listen to potential changes and see what we'd like to do.
Absolutely.
Okay. Trustee Patterson, is that an answer to your question? So I presume you have some questions and potential changes, so feel free.
Okay, so starting on page 12 of the preliminary statement, I just want to make sure I'm clear on my understanding of this, because it does indicate that our principal payments increase over time. Does this impact the calculation of our reserve requirements? So as principal increases, will reserve increase as well, or is the reserve expected to be static across the life of the loan?
The reserve is expected to be static.
Okay, thank you. Next is page 21 of the preliminary statement. It lists no billed water customers. What are those?
Our no bill, those are accounts so for our tracking of water use, that would be town property that are set up as an account that receives no billing.
Do we have any responsibility as a town for the accuracy of statistics, county information, things like that included in the preliminary statement?
We receive that information directly from the county.
So AMCO would not hold the town liable for any errors in that data? Or the people who ultimately purchased the bonds?
That's why they got it directly from the county.
And then one thing I mentioned at the last meeting on packet page 130, I'm not sure what the page number is for the statement itself. If you look at the ending balance of the sewer fund and then the beginning balance for the following year, there's a pretty big discrepancy there.
Those are two different calculations of fund balances. So the 1 year includes fixed assets that were transferred due to the water project. The second one is the correct calculation, the smaller number, from the 20. Those are those are updated, correct numbers from the auditor. The 2019 were estimates.
Okay, is that something that we should note in the numbers in the statement itself, or
It's advised.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, trustee Pass? Anything else from any other board members? Yes.
I have a question on page 27 of the document, 131 in the packet. It has Dave Knudsen as his expiration date is 2022, and I believe that should be 2020 because he's a temporary position and should be elected this year.
Yes, he was appointed, directly appointed by the member, and as such, should be have a 2020 term.
I think Dorothy asked her to, they copied it from the website, but they're carrying over the term position expiration instead of the appointment expiration, so we'll get it correct.
Anything else from the board members? Not hearing anything. Anything from members of the public? Yes, Watson.
On that same page, not very referred to, shouldn't the town administrator say interim town administrator? Just for accuracy?
Yeah, I think that's probably correct. Anything else from the public? I'm not hearing anything. It is my understanding that this is a preliminary statement, and so I am presuming that we would have a final statement brought to us for final approval. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm presuming that. I think what we should do is adopt with the changes that were presented this evening.
We have a motion to adopt on the table. Is that correct? So what I need is an amended motion, so motion to adopt with the changes.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we, that I will change my motion to adopt with the amendments.
Any further discussion from members of the board? Anything further from the public? Hearing anything, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the AMCO Filing Services Agreement. The next step in this process is the AMCO Filing Services Agreement. Under SEC rules, the town has a continuing obligation to make reports. AMCO would assist the town in meeting those requirements pursuant to terms of the proposed filing service agreement. It's my understanding that that agreement does have an annual cost to it, and the annual fee is $250 for AMCO to provide those services. Anything that Treasurer King, Ms. Jones, and Mr. Nerlin would like to add?
I have nothing.
It's just the clarification that it was brought about with the $250, that's the service fee that was asked earlier about. That's not from Bond Council, but that's from AMCO doing the annual filings.
Thank you. Given that, I would entertain a motion to approve the AMCO Filing Services Agreement and authorize me to sign the agreement on behalf of the town.
I move that we approve the AMCO Services Sustainment Agreement and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Any discussion from the board? I'm not hearing anything from the public.
Trustee Steele has one.
Yes, please.
So in the agreement, it says the $250 per year, but it also says that they reserve the right to adjust their annual fee. Is there any way that we can have that amended so that it's $250 regardless, they can't raise the fee on it?
They can amend the fee, but we could also opt to have a different provider for the services.
What's the benefit of using them as opposed to doing it ourselves?
their knowledge and expertise. And my thought would be that probably one reason why they leave that provision in there is that those reporting requirements could increase. That would be my suspicion. But as Mr. Nerlin stated, the bottom line is that the increase was such that we did not wish to proceed. We could find someone else to assist us, but it is something that we're going to want to have professional assistance. And
is this the only company we've looked at, or have we looked at other companies that help do this?
no, we have not looked at other companies, mainly because obviously this is the entity that is working through the entire process with us. Any other questions or comments from members of the board or members of the public? Hearing anything, we have a motion and a second to approve the agreement and authorize me to sign it on behalf of the town. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
That motion carries. Next item on the agenda, new business. Western Slope Conservation Center 2020 River Park project updates. We had this on the agenda, I think, at the last meeting, and we continue to go tonight. So glad to see we have a representative from Western Slope. Feel free to address it.
Thank you, Mayor. Jay Carter with the Western Slope Conservation Center. Yeah, this is one of those rare occasions where I don't have to ask anything of the board, which is kind of nice. But we thought it was a good opportunity to update the town and the board of what was going on. We had a really successful rural philanthropy day this year, and we connected with a group called the Telluride Foundation that was at Rural Philanthropy Days and applied for a pretty good grant for River Park updates. Got that grant, and there's 3 main projects that are in town here. One of them would be a shade structure at the River Park over the picnic tables that are there. It's been a long time coming. And another project is an outdoor amphitheater or an outdoor classroom across Minnesota Creek, kind of in the open area at the River Park. That project probably won't start till next summer. But we're excited to get that going. That was part of our River Park master planning process. Another project that I think the town has been a part of is working on the adjacent property at the Pamela High School area. They're part of their master planning process, and the Fly the Eagle plan was to put a trail system in the river bottoms there. And so we hadn't been successful with that in the past. This particular project that was awarded, so we are already working with the school to look at that project. That won't be again until 2021. But we're excited about that. We're excited about those things that will be happening. Also with the town's master planning process, I'm sure that's a good time to open up those discussions. One bit of bad news, I suppose, that I have to relay is that we did apply with the town for a GOCO LPOR grant to replace the Minnesota Creek Bridge at the River Park, and we did not get that grant. So unfortunately, we are falling back and looking at some other ideas there. My concerns are that we'll lose that bridge this year, but hopefully not. The river really came up last year. So that's a pretty priority project for us, and we'll be looking at a few things for that. So that's the update I have. Any questions? Certainly.
Questions to the board, Mr. Hart? I'm not hearing anything. Thank you very much for all your work. The River Park is a wonderful asset for the town.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Citizens for a Healthy Community, Council on Environmental Quality Rulemaking to amend National Environmental Policy Act regulations comment letter. We have a representative from Citizens for a Healthy Community. Please.
Good evening, trustees. Natasha Lejay, Citizens for a Healthy Community. I'm here this evening to ask you to engage on this rulemaking by the Council for Environmental Quality on their proposed changes to the implementation rules for the National Environmental Policy Act. I want to start out by saying, I know that probably sounds like that's very
very far removed from issues of the town. I'm here before you because this is not just simply about making the Environmental Policy Act more efficient. These proposed rules are really about gutting or eviscerating the National Environmental Policy Act. And why that's so important, I feel, for the town is because the town's jurisdiction is limited, and there are projects and activities that happen outside of the town that depend on not only the county, the state, but also the federal government to ensure protections for the town's community and its economy. And in this case, we're talking about the National Environmental Policy Act that affects such projects such as oil and gas development in our watershed. And the town has been very much engaged in those issues over the years, from proposed lease sales to the North Fork Mangoes Master Development Plan to the BLM's Resource Management Plan and the Forest Service's Forest Revision Plan. So what this rule proposes is not only to reduce the amount of time and environmental review from the average of 4.5 years to 2 years, but effectively it reduces or eliminates public participation. Conflicts of interest between the proponents is aggravated or increased. It eliminates cumulative impacts and climate analysis. It would prevent judicial review and public accountability, potentially marginalize local and state government, and more. And so what I'm asking for you tonight is not to take action tonight, but to review the materials that I put in that were in your packet, which include a brief overview, as well as a letter from CHC requesting that you engage in this process, and also a draft letter which goes through more detailed analysis for your consideration in submitting a letter. That letter is due, or comments are due March 10th. And so I'm just asking you to consider engaging on that and consider taking action at your next meeting.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Ledger from the board? Yes, Mr. Pass.
Actually, a question for staff. If we withhold action right now and take action at the next meeting, which is scheduled for, I believe, March 4th, does that leave staff enough time to draft a letter if we choose to do so?
Administrator first.
The next board meeting is March 10th, and typically we would utilize the draft letter that was provided by the requesting entity as the basis, and then make modifications as directed by the board.
Other questions, comments from the
So to follow up on that, if the letter is due March 10th, and
it's due March 7th, I believe. Is that correct?
I believe.
Is that what you said? March 10th?
March 10th.
March 10th. The next meeting is
March 10th.
March 10th.
March 10th.
So we would need to take action tonight if we're going to move forward with the letter.
Thank you for the question.
I'm sorry, our next meeting is before that.
Other questions or comments? Yes.
Just note that you've given us quite a lot to read here. I mean, it sounds more like a court pleading than a letter, a protest letter. But perhaps we can trim it down some.
Absolutely, and try to give you, I was there on the side to give you more information perhaps than you need, and I should probably say that that letter was also based primarily on, a lot on Gunnison County's letter. Gunnison County is planning on engaging on this process, so a lot of what's in here came directly from the job letter.
Pretty disheartening.
Pardon?
Pretty disheartening, what they're doing.
Other questions, comments from members of the board?
Just a few comments. First of all, I think we've been calling a number of special meetings because of requests from the group. And that makes it really difficult for us to make decisions very quickly. So I would like to put it on rewind and say you came in 2 weeks earlier than this instead of now. Because to me, that was too much pressure on us to try to think about how that letter should be written. The second thing that's really important for me is typically I see the Western Slope Conservation Center coming in, both groups together, supporting the proposal. If I don't see that, that causes concern in my mind. The next thing is the tone of the letter, I thought was very negative. To me, the main things in the town is public input. We don't want to see the decreased public input and the ability to be able to do that. The other thing I'm wondering about is what is the situation with litigation around this? Whatever decision is going to be made, I'm assuming there's going to be lawsuits about that. And also, I want to be really careful about when we're firing a bullet, that we don't just fire a bullet every single time. That we're very careful and targeted about when we decide to send letters and make positions like this. Thank you.
Ms. Ledger, would you like to respond to this?
Sure. As Jake isn't here anymore, so I don't want to speak for the Conservation Center, but what I can say generally is that the environmental community is unified around this issue.
Miss, could you turn your mic on, please? There we go.
Is that better? I'm sorry. Do you want me to repeat what I said? So in terms of the letter itself and your question in regards to litigation, I'm sure this issue, if this rule goes forward as is, I'm sure it will be litigated. I think what's really important here is that local governments that are concerned about projects that impact their communities and want to ensure that they have public participation, want to ensure that they're involved in the process, weigh in on this. The Governor Polis, as well as John Putnam from CDPHE, the Colorado Energy Office, the Department of Natural Resources, the Department of Transportation, they all weighed in at the February 11th hearing, which was actually one of 2 in the entire country on this significant rulemaking. And I'd say the second meeting actually happened today in DC, and I haven't heard feedback from that yet. So I think that to your concerns about perhaps the length of the letter or even the tone of the letter, I think reducing it to what the town is comfortable with, I think is what's important. What's important is to say that that NEPA is our bedrock environmental law. It is what has allowed us to protect our ecosystem, and we want to ensure that that bedrock nature is maintained, that it's not being crippled, essentially. That is the net message. And I could send a shorter letter, but again, I try to err on giving you as much information as possible.
Other questions, comments? Yes.
Well, I would really like to see us do something with this. Again, I think this is incredibly important. They're taking one of the main tools that we have to fight for our air and our water and our citizens away from us. And I think we need to resist this and we need to comment on it. I would propose that we do a special meeting. I would be happy to attempt to pare this letter down dramatically so that if we have a special meeting, we would have something smaller and more concise to work from instead of having to do it as a committee or as a board all at once.
I am taking that as a motion to set a special meeting.
Yes.
I wish to propose a date. We could deal with the matter in a bifurcated way. Let's find out if we've got a second and whether or not the board is inclined to set a special meeting. And then if it is inclined to set a special meeting, then we can deal with the date issue. So what we have on the table is a motion to set a special meeting. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion from the board. Yes, Trustee Patterson.
I would be comfortable foregoing the second meeting and having, I don't know if this is okay or not, to have Trustee Backer work with staff to put together a draft, and if it was our actual deadline on the 10th, could we send it off by email immediately following the meeting, or is that too late?
I believe it's actually through the portal, so I'll have to double check on when that final time usually closes.
Okay, if it's possible that it's Elizabeth next time in favor of the special meeting to get it done.
Other comments, members of the board? Yes, Trustee Bowman. Or Trustee Bowman.
Is it possible that one of our committees, or Trustee Bowman, could go ahead and do this, and that we could authorize you to sign it ahead of time?
Yeah, I would have real qualms about authorizing somebody to sign a letter that the board does not see. Correct. I think that would be very...
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Could the Government Affairs Committee come up with a draft, and then we look at it? The second question is, will the mayor sign it?
The answer is no. That does not mean the town can't issue. Whether it be through the town administrator, whether it be through the mayor pro tem. I will reiterate my concern. We are delving into the intricacies of federal ruling on an issue that is outside of our jurisdiction. And what that does is it takes time and it takes resources. And that time and resources, in my opinion, could be used better elsewhere. I understand and appreciate the concerns that the members of this board have, but there are lots of issues out there that indirectly affect the town. And the question becomes, if we start taking positions on all of those, we can end up doing an awful lot of business other than the business that we are really required to do. The other concern, I've expressed this before, is that citizens are helping the community. They have a very clear perspective, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're an advocate for a particular position. But this board essentially has accepted whatever they have stated. And my sense would be that if, lo and behold, we have somebody from the oil and gas industry in here, they would probably have a much different view. And I would have the same concerns if we had a board that was pro-oil and gas, and we had somebody coming in from the oil and gas industry, and they said, gee, this is what we think, we want you to sign off on the letter. So, those are the reasons why I want to sign it. The other thing is, as I said, there's a limited amount of time, and the questions that are involved in this issue are very intricate. And that takes an awful lot of time to really delve into and make some sort of decision. So that's the reason I would not sign the letter. However, what we've got right now is a motion and a second to set a special meeting. Further discussion from the board.
I have a couple of comments.
Yes, please.
So I think that it is the town's responsibility to protect the health and welfare of our citizens. And I think part of that is responding to things, even though they happen outside of our jurisdiction, that do impact the health and welfare of our citizens. Because of that, I'm in favor of responding to this with a letter. I think water is one of our most precious resources here in the North Fork Valley, and damage to the watershed could cause irreparable harm to the agriculture, outdoor activities, and daily life of people in the town. So I think it's important that we respond. Second, Mr. Berry mentioned that you will not sign the letter, and I understand your position on the letter. At the same time, our code does state that the mayor shall execute by his signature all instruments of and concerning the business of the town as the trustees or statutes or ordinances may require. So my reading of that would be that if the trustees vote to approve such a letter, that it would be the mayor's responsibility to then sign that letter.
I would disagree with that reading. One, it's not what I would consider to be an instrument. Two, because I am the mayor does not mean that I do not have First Amendment rights. This board can't order any member of this board to make a statement. And if you want to apply that to me, I think you need to be careful, because then the board can also apply it to you. We are all independent, elected officials. And I'm not going to sign something that I do not think is accurate. Quite frankly, you can have a scenario where an ordinance is vetoed by the mayor, and it is passed and the mayor never signs it. The veto is overridden, the mayor never signs it. So there is a way for the town to go forward if it wishes to do so, either by directing the town administrator, who is, and it's the way, and who is under the direction of the board, or to have the mayor pro tem sign it if in fact she wishes to do so. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Trustee Gregory.
I assume the citizens of Howland community is issuing a letter or a statement to them. Can we just, as a board, send a letter of support of the citizens of Howland community position? Along with your,
I think that's up for you to decide. I don't have a draft of what that looks like, so I would feel like that's what you.
And we can get to that in a second, but just procedurally, what we have in front of us is a motion to set a special meeting. We have a second on that. Any further discussion on a motion to set a special meeting?
Mr. Mayor, I looked real quickly at the website for that. It says you can submit comments on or before March 10th, which I believe doesn't expire until midnight. So you can submit those online. That was one of the options, or by fax. So I don't know if a special meeting is necessary.
Well, my only concern is that unless they have cut off the portal in the evening, and so we would have to absolutely make sure that that portal is open. So I think it's a better scenario to have a draft letter, have a special meeting, take care of it, and be sure that it gets in.
The other issue associated with that, if you have a draft letter and the board wishes to make some changes, staff needs to be able to make that change or changes, and they need to be able to get filed. And obviously, they could be working very close to midnight trying to get that done. So I don't know how realistic that would be. So we've got a motion and second to set a special meeting. Any comments from members of the public? Slater, would you like to comment?
Well, I might offer something if it makes sense. If you're comfortable with the position of basically saying that you want to ensure that NEPA protects public participation, and the issues that are important to the board is direct the town administrator to draft that letter and sign it from the town. I guess I'm just trying to figure out a way to avoid a special meeting for you, and I don't know if that's a good one, but if that's something that might be workable.
If that is something that's going to be acceptable to the board, one thing you can do is simply deal with the motion to set a special meeting. Just simply vote that down when someone wishes to make the motion regarding the letter of support. We can address the letter of support at that time, depending on what the board wishes to do. Whether they're comfortable with the letter of support, or they wish to have a special meeting and try to come up with a more detailed comment. So it's really kind of up to you. Anything?
Well, even if we did just a letter of support, we're still basically saying that we're going to agree to sign off on something none of us have seen. So I don't see how that will help.
Yeah, the only question is whether or not we could actually come to an agreement as to the actual language of that letter. It's fairly brief. It might very well be possible as a board to say, yes, that is essentially the language that we are agreeing to, and then entrust the town administrator to prepare that according to the board's instructions. So I think that is possible. But we still have procedurally the motion to set a special meeting. Anything else in the public? Yes, Ms. Lyle.
I just want to point out the frustration I'm hearing with this compressed time that you have to make these decisions. I'd like to say welcome to the future. This is what this rulemaking is about. It's about making it difficult to comment about things. So keep that in mind. I mean, as a member of the public, I get frustrated with the board when our time is compressed, and I would be frustrated with the federal government if the same thing were happening. You know, we assume that it's all about oil and gas development in Gunnison County, but you never know what the future holds for us. You could have drilling on the boundaries of town. You could have horizontal drilling. It's all possible. And this is some rulemaking. I mean, when they start amending the rulemaking process to eliminate public comment and public voice, I'm concerned. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment? We are dealing with the motion to set a special meeting. Yes. Mr. Hirschfeld.
Constantine Hirschfeld. I'm wondering why everybody's so worried about the environment. How many people walk every night? What do you use to burn in your house? Do you burn air or do you burn gas? Worried about that part. I think this place is just great the way it is. Thank you.
Any other comments? I'm hearing none. Let's deal with the motion to set a special meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Yeah, I think we need a roll call on that.
Trustee Becker?
Aye.
Trustee Barrett?
Nay.
Trustee Bettinger?
Nay.
Trustee Deal?
Nay.
Trustee Kennison?
Nay.
Trustee Patterson? Aye.
That motion fails. Is there any other motion that board member would like to make at this particular time?
One of the reasons I voted nay is because I thought that our presenter here, Natasha, did a good job of summarizing what our concerns are, and that is public input. And it's suppressing public input. It's suppressing our ability to be involved in the process. It's cutting out local government's statement just to that effect. That's very simple for our town would be enough.
I'm still waiting for. Yeah, if there's some action the board wants to take at this juncture, we need a formal motion.
I'd like to move that the Governor's Affairs Committee draft a response for the town and submit that in our packets for the meeting on March 10th.
we have a second on that? I hear no second on that. That motion fails for lack of a second. Any other motions that anyone would like to make before we move on?
I move that the government affairs committee draft a response to the town and give it to the town administrator.
Do we have a second on that?
Well, I would ask that we delineate which points that we would make in that response.
The 3 points. Lack of the public input. What did you say, David?
I probably didn't say this, but compressing the time for public input.
Hang on, we're in the middle of a...
And I would add a piece about the ability of the town to have some say in environmental impacts on the town.
Okay. Trustee Gibbs, hang on for half a second, because actually Trustee Butters is in the process of making the motion. So.
Community motion. The new rules would limit public input. Can you turn on the mic? Sorry. The new rules, as I understand, would limit public input. They would also reduce the time for, there would be no judicial review.
Right, that's...
Please.
If you'd like to comment, perhaps.
I just want to clarify, it's not so much compressing the time the public can provide input. It's actually reducing public input by saying that the project is not subject to that analysis. So that's why it's different. And so that's why I say either limits or eliminates public participation, because by saying that a certain action is not even subject to review, then the public doesn't even get to engage. And that's where that also limits even local government.
Trustee Butters, since you were in the process of making this motion, you're going to need to clarify specifically each point you want in the letter. In fact, we're going to try to do this tonight.
Yeah. Okay, so
cumulative effects are very important. Eliminating. Yeah, with cumulative effects.
If I could offer something. So in terms of, if you look at the letter, the way it's drafted right now, page 1, up to the second paragraph, so basically the town's interest, why you're concerned. And I think you could just say, for the following reasons, the town is concerned and opposes the proposed changes that would eliminate cumulative impacts and climate analysis, redefine what triggers and constitutes a NEPA analysis, prevent judicial review and public accountability, limit or eliminate public participation, marginalize local government. I think those are your main points. And then you can take out the rest of because that's just more justification. But just to get your point across, that's just really...
Right now we got Administrator Ferguson shaking her head, so I'm going to let her talk.
I'm just going to say, for clarification, I'm respectfully going to ask that the motion be restated and not be a continuance from my... My hope was that in this process we can come up with 3 or 4 points that are clear that Ms. Ferguson can understand and make sure that she can write down, so that what the board votes on is what she sends out. So
Trustee Buninger, you want to take a stab at it?
I'd like,
Or
I'd like Trustee Patterson to take a stab.
Trustee Patterson? Since your motion did not get all the way out, we'll just presume that the motion was not.
Yeah, we need a second there.
Not made, and I don't believe we did have a second on that. So we will start again, Trustee Patterson, and please make your motion.
Okay, I make a motion that we direct the Government Affairs Committee in communication with town staff to prepare a letter that will be signed by staff that includes the bullet points in section 3 of the draft letter that was provided to us. Those bullet points are in the top half of packet page 160.
I will second that motion.
Discussion from the board.
I think that this coming to us at the last minute is actually doing exactly what we planned to write them a letter about that we're against.
Any other questions or comments? And I guess my question would be this, because the first portion of it was that government affairs and town staff are going to meet. I guess the question is, are we giving government affairs then the authority to make changes, whereas if what we're doing is simply directing staff to write a letter with the following bullet points, that's pretty clear in terms of what the board is directing, as opposed to, okay, government affairs, you sit down and have a meeting with staff and you come up with something else which we will never see. So it seems to me that the motion really should be that staff will write a letter with these following bullet points, which I presume are the bullet points that are sitting in section 3 on the top, all the way down page 168. Is that correct?
So I modify my motion to direct staff to prepare a letter based on those 4 bullet points and sign and submit on behalf of the town.
Second.
Now, any further discussion? At least we're clear now in terms of what is being directed.
Just one comment about the wording. The last bullet point says silencing the public, and I think just limiting or eliminating public participation is sufficient. I think silencing the public is a little too strong.
Are you going to make a motion to amend the main motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to amend the main motion that we would move towards silencing the public by.
Do we have a second on that? Any discussion on the motion to amend the main motion, which would eliminate silencing the public by? So we have a sentence basically that says limiting or eliminating public participation. Okay. Further discussion on the motion to amend the main motion. I'm not hearing anything. On the motion to amend the main motion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Now we're back to the main motion, which would be to direct staff to write a comment and file the comment that would basically incorporate or state the bullet points on page 168, section 3. Is that correct? Okay, that is the main motion as amended. Any further public comment before we vote on this? Yes, Ms. Watson. And again, it's on the main motion as amended.
I just want to say when Ms. Leger articulated the bullet points, she tied in the word municipality the way she worded it, it sounded, it was a little bit more clear about how it affected the community, and I think that's all recorded now, and perhaps you could listen to that, so it flows a little bit better. Thanks.
I mean, I would anticipate that Ms. Ferguson will add some verbiage necessary just to have a letter. But in terms of the content, substantive content, the way I understand this motion, it would be limited to those bullet points. Correct? Okay. We have the motion is amended, which we can have staff, Ms. Ferguson, go ahead and write and file a letter with the bullet points on page 168, section 3. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Need a roll call.
Trustee Dracker?
Aye.
Trustee Bear?
Say.
Trustee Beal?
Nay.
Trustee Tyson? Aye. Trustee Bettinger?
Aye.
Trustee Peterson?
Aye. Okay, that motion passes 4-2. So that letter will be prepared and filed by the town administrator. Thank you, folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, that turned out to be a little more lengthy and painful than I had expected. I apologize for that.
There are many things that we do that are lengthy and painful. It's not the first time that people ask, I'm sure. So. Okay, let us move forward. And the next item on the agenda is Dark Skies Paonia ordinance discussion. Mr. Watson?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I believe there was some misunderstanding at our last Dark Skies meeting, and I think this is intended to be a second meeting in March, not the second meeting here, so I think it was submitted prematurely.
Okay, well, given that that is the case, we will pass on that particular item. And we will move forward to the next item, the family land sale procedure. Administrator Ferguson, do you want to address this issue?
Sure, just a quick update to the board. So there's been a lot of ongoing conversation about the policy and procedures that the town undertakes when it disposes of any town-owned property. And through that, I've reached out to Delaware County to find out what their process and procedure are. And while doing that, I found that they have a resolution that outlines very clearly the process and procedure for the sale of property. And with the board's approval, I would like to continue to work on a revision using that document as a template with the town attorney to bring to the board for approval at a later date.
Any questions for Administrator Ferguson regarding this particular issue? I'm not hearing any from public. Yes, Ms. Watson.
So could you reiterate, is this a procedure that the county has for disposing its own property that you'd like to kind of borrow from? Okay, and that's available on the county's website, or?
I received it directly from the county.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we will move on to the next item. Town Hall electrical repairs. Again, Administrator Ferguson.
Again, just reporting out, as you witnessed throughout the evening and over the last several weeks, we have ongoing electrical problems throughout the building. We solicited bids from 3 different electricians in the county. One provided a bid on time. The others have not provided a bid at all. But because the bid that we received was not included in the packet, we are going to allow it to continue, and we will reach out again to see if we can get some additional bids. The bid that came in is within budgeted numbers, which is just over $6,000.
Questions from members of the board regarding this particular issue? hearing anything. Anything from the public regarding this particular issue? Not hearing anything, we will move forward to GOCO Grant Award, Parks, Recreation, and Trails Master Plan. So I understand the town has received 4 proposals. Mr. McCall, would you like to address the board in regard to this matter?
Yes, thanks, Master. So yeah, we received 4 proposals, and I reviewed all of them, and it really came down to pretty much 2 finalists. There's the other 2, one was based in Denver, and they just moved an office there in September, so Canyon would serve as one of its first clients. They primarily serve in urban areas in the South and East Coast, so I did not see that necessarily being a fit with the town. And then another firm that submitted, they just didn't have experience with actually writing a master plan. They were good with schematic design, but they couldn't really put the whole thing together into a working document. And so it came down to Western Slope Consulting and DHM Design. To touch on DHM Design, they developed the county's Parks, Recreation, Trails Master Plan. They're familiar with the area. They do a lot of the planning up in the Roaring Fork Valley. Seen a lot of their work at planning conferences. It's quality. They're definitely a qualified firm. But when it came down to it, looking at Western Slope Consulting, to my knowledge, the town has had experience with the project lead in the past, and he has done some work with Pamia. And they're also going to be incorporating the most amount of public input. And so there's 3 phases, and in each phase there's about 6 opportunities for the public to comment on schematic designs, on what they want to see. And when thinking about a master plan, the most important part is the public input process, and seeing the quality of their work, their schematic designs, their overall plans. It really came down to just that. And so Western Slope Consulting and having conversations with Corinne and staff, that would be our recommendation.
Okay. Questions from Ms. Ball, from members of the board? Yes.
I was wondering about the printing and lodging, because they're charging us $1,500 a pop to travel here. And does that $6,000 include that travel, or is some travel going to be up on top of that?
So that it was included in their bid cost. I did ask them that. But yeah, they will be coming down as a firm. At least Western Slope Consulting, they're partnering with Greenplay and also Leggett Studios. And I think that Greenplay is coming down here maybe once or twice. And then Leggett Studios maybe a couple times, but Western Slope Consulting will be here 7 times, and that's included in the bid cost.
Other questions from Mr. Moore? Just as background, so everyone remembers that the town was awarded a $57,000 Great Outdoors Colorado grant in September, and the town's match on this project, my understanding, is $10,000.
Yes, it was $10,000 in cash funds and $9,000 in kind, but we requested that the project budget for submittals be $67,000, just to make sure that we stay within budget. And so all these proposals did that.
Okay, thank you. We have heard that staff's recommendation is to award the Parks, Recreation, and Trails Master Plan to Western Slope Consulting. Is there a board member would like to make a motion at this particular time?
I just have a question.
Please.
Is this a decision that we have to make tonight?
With the timeline of the RFP, it's recommended so that we can kick off and be able to add this chapter to the master plan in a timely manner in association with the other chapters. But you can delay it, I'll just have to relay that to the firms.
Okay, the reason I ask is I really appreciate the work that Evan and staff did putting together the summaries of the proposals, but I have not had time to read all 4 of the proposals in full. That's a lot of information, and if we have the time, I would like to do that, but I also think, like I said, I think staff did a good job of summarizing.
Any other comments before I entertain a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I did look over some of the proposals, but I admit I had to skim. One of the proposals was pretty impressive on its face because it had a number of people who were local and were well known to the community, and that was attracted me a lot at the beginning. But the other mitigating thing on this is that the amount of staff time it would take to support that proposal would be way above the budget. Then I looked at some of the travel costs, but like Trustee Patterson, I haven't had time to look over each proposal, and I think more importantly, the public hasn't been given a chance to look at it. It was in only our packets, but not to the public. So I would rather delay it for a week, or till our next meeting, so that we can. I know that's an inconvenience for the master planning process and stuff, but I don't think 2 weeks would kill us if everyone has an open shot at being able to look at this. I do support the recommendations, but I'd rather that the public can also see it.
Is that a formal motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we delay this to next meeting.
Do we have a second on that? Any further discussion from the board in terms of continuing this matter until the next meeting? Not hearing anything from the board, anything from the public? Not hearing anything from, yep, please.
I just why did you say the process is being so accelerated? Why the necessity of that?
In the RFP, it laid out a pretty dead set timeline in terms of the RFP process, and tonight was the night that it was supposed to be accepted, and tomorrow morning they were supposed to be notified whether or not they were awarded the bid or not. All that would do is push back their timelines. So yeah, so it's totally fine if that's the decision of the board.
Ms. Watson?
So maybe just a little admonishment, when RFPs are put out into the future, if you could keep the public and our ability to comment on things in your plan, we'd appreciate that. Thank you.
I don't completely understand the point, but
Well,
if you
I'd
want
like
to
to
clarify, might
be
be
able
helpful.
to see things, yeah, in the packet, so the next time you do an RFP, make sure that there's enough time for us to view things when you put the dates in that you want, that you're going to tell people to respond.
I think I get your point, but
Yeah.
it's not an RFP, it's usually the actual proposal in response to the RFP.
Yeah, but I mean,
The confusion, but I understand your
That's
point.
what it
And, I do take it that these were emailed to board members who were not included in the packet, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, bottom line is there's a motion, and I believe we have a second to go ahead and continue this matter to the next meeting. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Volk, for your work on this, and let them know that we're going to make a decision.
And they'll be in the packets for 2 weeks from now.
Yes,
So the public-
yes, so the public can look at them. And they are fairly lengthy. They are lengthy proposals, so more time to evaluate is probably a good thing. Okay. Committee reports. Finance and personnel. Trustee Budger.
Well, we just wanted to remind everyone that we can take a look at the duties of the mayor during the 60-day period before the election happens. And if we decide as a council that we want to change the duties, this would be the time to do that. So there was a reminder on that. Let me look at my notes for a second. Also, do we have a nominee from the employees and mayor on the liaison committee?
Yes, actually, I presume John Howard is still with KBF, is that correct?
No.
Yes,
He's
okay.
moved out of the country.
He was the citizen representative, so we will need to find another citizen representative. And my recollection of the personnel handbook is that is a mayoral appointment. So I'm open to suggestions. Obviously, what I'm trying to find are people that have some personnel management background. Also, too, there is a trustee that was appointed, and I'm trying to recall who that person was, and my guess is they are no longer on the board. It may have very well been. Well, there's three. There's supposed to be three people on the liaison committee. It's supposed
But
to
in
be.
cases, it's one member from finance and personnel, so it's whichever person would be available, one from the community and one from staff.
So, and I'm trying to recall if trustee Buninger, whether or not I had appointed you. I can't recall. Because quite frankly, we did this probably 2 years ago in anticipation of utilizing the liaison group, and that never came to fruition, so we've never actually.
We used it once.
We used it once, that's
We
correct.
used one. Trustee Buninger was the primary,
Okay.
and the other member of personnel was the secretary.
Okay, so thank you for the reminder. I'm trying to retrieve my recollection of what we did, but it sounds like trustee Budinger was appointed. I think that is fine that she continue in that position. We do need to find a citizen appointee, and I am open to suggestions that any board member has, or quite frankly, members of the public has, in terms of who that person should be. And then the employee representative was, yes, Ferguson. The issue there was she was the clerk at the time, and not the clerk and town administrator. So the question is whether or not the town administrator should be filling that position. And the answer is no.
I can't be, because then I would be the first step
Sure.
of the grievance process. And we have two members of staff who, because of scheduling, have not submitted their choice yet. I don't think it will change it from where the numbers are at, but I would like to give them the opportunity to potentially have on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay. Does that make sense? What we'll do, trustee Budinger, you will keep your seat on the group, and
The other member of the personnel committee is an alternate.
that is correct. That is correct. And then the employees will finish their vote, their decision process in terms of who the employee representative should be, and then hopefully we can find a member of the public who is willing and capable of serving in that position.
That'd be great. So if trustee Budinger gets cold feet or it looks too gnarly, I'll be glad to serve. The second thing is we're going to set a meeting for the personnel committee tomorrow morning. We're meeting with our interim town administrator. And if you have any input on what we should be covering or any priorities you'd like to look at, this would be the time to ship us an email or text us.
The only thing I would caution people about is email exchanges between all board members that include more than 2 board members. So just that,
Send it
that
here.
caution. Yeah, so and perhaps sending it directly to Corinne and not engaging in discussions with other board members would be the appropriate thing to do. Anything else from finance and personnel? Public Works.
Mr. Mayor, we haven't met, so let's do that as part of lunch.
Trustee Deal, anything to?
No, I think we should probably set the time to meet though.
We'll have to get together and do it with Corinne.
Okay, thank you. Government affairs?
Go ahead, Michelle. So we did meet last Friday with a focus on dogs and fences as suggested by the board. A couple of action items out of that. Chief Ferguson will bring a revised plan probably in April to the board for how the department will deal with dogs at large and a revised fee structure for that. The Governmental Affairs Committee will draft a revision to our current fence ordinance and will present it to the building inspector for review prior to bringing it back to the full board in the near future as well. Our next Governmental Affairs meeting has been set for Friday, March 6th.
Thank you. Anything to add?
Can I just?
Space Security. Yeah, a question, please, come forward.
I just wanted to speak to the fence ordinance. I was reviewing the ordinances in chapter 18 that were going to the planning commission. And the fence ordinance was part, or is part, of the accessory uses ordinance, which used to be in the zoning code. It has to do with accessory structures, the placement on your property, the height of the vegetation, the location of things. These are all zoning issues. They're not really part of the building code. And I would like, perhaps if we could start thinking about restoring the zoning code again, with these ordinances that were removed from it, including floodplain development. That's an important part of the master plan, comprehensive plan, and that really belongs in the zoning of the town. It has to do with land use. There are flood prevention ordinances in the International Building Code, so this is kind of conflicting. So I'll be speaking about this more to the planning commission, hopefully, and hopefully we can start looking at how the zoning section of our code was gutted by a former town manager. Thank you.
Space to create.
We haven't met.
Tree board.
The tree board got together last Friday, and we looked at the ordinances that set up the tree board and their duties, and have done a rewrite, which will then go to government affairs and then eventually to the board.
Okay, next item on the agenda is executive session, Park Alley Sewer Line Project. I would entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I would go into executive session for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiation, developing strategy for negotiation, and/or instructing the negotiator under CRS Section 24-6-4024E. And the following additional details are provided for identification purposes regarding the Park Alley Sewer Line Project.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion. The participants in the executive session were Trustee Mary Cochran, Trustee Bill Baer, Trustee Michelle Patterson, Trustee Karen Buttinger, Trustee Karen Deal, Trustee Dave Newsom, myself, Town Attorney Bo Nerlin, Town Administrator Corinne Ferguson, and Travis Lober, Public Works Director. For the record, any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go into the executive session occurred during the executive session, that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law. I would ask you to state your concerns for the record. Do I have any motions that anyone wishes to make at this time?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we direct town staff to issue the final settlement payments as necessary for the Park Sewer project.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Any other motions?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we direct Town Attorney Bill Nerlin to draft a settlement agreement with the contractors involved with the Park Street Sewer project.
A second on that?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, folks. Really appreciate it.